And now we are going to go. There's very little coverage actually in the papers today on the march in Dublin yesterday. There is some now, but just very little, and I presume it is because of deadlines and so on and so forth. But we are going to go to Joe Little. Joe, you were talking about it on the news last night. Just remind people what happened and who spoke and what was said.
Well, 25,000 people are estimated by the Gardaí to have shown up for the Vigil for Life in Merrion Square in Dublin yesterday. They came from all corners of the country. Buses were organised, transport was organised. The bishops and the Catholic clergy throughout the country were heavily involved in mobilising support. Then, of course, there was the Pro-Life campaign and the Life Institute, who have formed an alliance in order to organise vigils like this. And in the cold weather, it was an extraordinary achievement, in my opinion, to get so many people onto the streets, given that there were blizzard-like conditions in parts of the country on Friday.
Indeed.
I think one of the significant events was the decision by Michelle Mulhern, a Fine Gael backbencher, who shares the Mayo constituency with the Taoiseach and the Kenny, to attend the rally.
Yeah.
And I think that while that's not totally unexpected, I think it may give heart to the people who are campaigning against the government's proposal to legislate for and regulate abortion in very limited circumstances. That it may indicate to them that maybe, to put it perhaps in a non-attractive way, they will smell blood and they will go for other backbenchers on the back of this success yesterday.
Or indeed pursue the concept of the free vote.
Pursuing the concept of the free vote is certainly one. They will push that, and the Catholic bishops have already called for that. But when they see someone as senior in Fine Gael as Lucinda Creighton, the Minister for Europe, appearing very cool about the idea in her reaction to the government's proposal to legislate, they will take heart as well. She has been consistent in her reaction to that. And then there are others like Peter Matthews from South Dublin who have reserved their position until they actually see the legislation that the government produces. So I think that all in all, it has been a satisfactory start to the new year for the pro-life campaign, and not a very happy one for the government. The free vote, in an odd way, it has been pointed out to me, protects the government backbenchers, because as they come under increasing pressure, which they certainly will, from the pro-life campaign and their allies, they will be able to turn to them and say, look, at a personal level, I agree with what you're saying, but look, there's a three-line whip on this, and I'll get kicked out of my party, I'll be no good to you in future, and so on in the Oireachtas. I mean, I just have to vote for it. Now, so
doesn't
I think
show a lot of moral courage, does it? I mean, that's
no. But in real terms, I mean, it's you're not worth much as an independent on the backbenches. Whereas in the long run, they can say, I can push on this issue. I can minimise the scope of the legislation. I can be of use to you as the pro-life campaign if I continue inside the tent rather than outside.
Right. Mickey Hart was there too.
Yeah, and he was using that term Middle Ireland. That Enda Kenny and Eamon Gilmore have to be reminded what Middle Ireland thinks about this subject. Now, it's of course a very interesting concept. Is there such a thing as Middle Ireland on this issue? The country has developed a kind of a secular culture, which we're not sure where that secular culture where it leans on the issue of very limited abortion. If they will buy the idea that you can have very limited abortion, including the grounds of suicide, without the floodgates being opened. And I think one of the big influential factors there is the fate of legislation in Britain, which was introduced by David Steele in 1967 on the basis of severe medical and social difficulties for the woman, and which effectively became abortion on demand. And I think Middle Ireland will want very, very emphatic reassurance on that issue. They will want reassurance that that's not going to happen here, and really that puts it up to the government to capture the people who Mickey Hart clearly believes are favouring him at the moment.
Just before I let you go, how long do you think it will be before the government produces whatever it is going to produce as the legislation?
Well, that's a very interesting question, as they say. The government hasn't committed itself to a specific timetable, as I understand it. The Attorney General is working on, Maura Whelan is working on the draft legislation, and the government is, as I understand it, continuing to discuss the issue. It's a thorny one. I mean, Labour clearly want to see this legislation as soon as possible. They want to be able to say to their supporters who are snapping at the leadership's heels over a variety of issues at the moment, look, we have this issue in the bag. It's a Labour demand.
Right.
We've got there, despite Fine Gael's promise signed by Phil Hogan that they wouldn't legislate for abortion, whereas ministers like Phil Hogan and many others in the Fine Gael party are going to be very, very slow to come up with legislation which they can't. If it can't
does that mean
that be watertight on the issue of opening the floodgates?
So does that mean this could go on and on and on?
Well,
like a year?
Well, put it this way: the turnout yesterday and the additional turnout in churches, by the way, like Archbishop Diarmuid Martin led a silent vigil in Westland Road Church, and many other bishops and priests held vigils all around the country to supplement what was going on in Dublin. That kind of turnout, that kind of show of force, will give pause for thought especially to Fine Gael backbenchers, and I think to the Fine Gael leadership, and the Taoiseach in particular, will have to assess where he should go in terms of holding his party together. Jack Lynch said in the wake of his famous landslide victory in 1977 that his difficulties only began once he got that huge majority. And the Kenny is faced with the same kind of problem,
right,
that backbenchers can waver and can go without him losing his majority. But why sacrifice the unity of his party if he can hammer out a much more limited deal with the Labour Party on this?
Just finally, there was a more modest, way more modest demonstration, I understand, from those who are on the other side.
Yes, there was. I know Claire Daly of the Socialist Party and many others attended a seminar in Dublin, basically to get their act together in terms of forming an umbrella group, as I understand it, to campaign in favour of legislation for abortion. And as you know, Claire Daly put forward the private members' bill on this around the time of the protests in the wake of the death of Savita Halappanavar in Galway late last year. I think this is going to be a critical issue, really, as to how this whole thing pans out. What's clear in the case of the pro-life lobby, is that they've harnessed all, it seems, most, if not all, elements of the pro-life constituency, along with the Catholic bishops, early on in this campaign.
Right.
And it's not clear that the pro-choice people have anything like the same kind of coherence as the pro-life people are showing. So yesterday's seminar will have been interesting in that way, and they did stage a token vigil. They didn't by any means try to match. Their vigil was dwarfed by that 25,000 turnout in Marion Square.
Okay, listen, thank you very, very much indeed for that. That was Joe Little, and we'll take a break.